All right. So, welcome to Networkers Champ, the YouTube channel, and then the collaboration class. Today would be talking about all right. So today we will discuss basically about the basic, or I would say the CUCM deployment. Quickly we'll cover this. We'll not go through in detail, but I'll just mention what all the basically deployment that we have, and then we will be talking about adding the phones or the phone registration, at least adding one phone, adding the phone to CUCM, and then we'll also understand the user end user adding basically. So adding end user to CUCM and associating the phone. We'll also discuss the end user how to use bulk administration tool, and then we'll also see basically what is LDAP and how to use that configuration, LDAP configuration. So this is what we're going to cover today in our class. Perfect. So I have this gateway already, though in this lab practical we do not need actually the gateway. But what we're going to do is we are having this call manager over here. We have Cisco Unity connection here. We have IMNP, server as well. What we would be doing here is, apart from, we have also one Active Directory, right? AD, and then couple of machines basically for the testing purpose, and then couple of phones, video phones that we have, right? So this is basically the environment, the IP schema that we are using everywhere here, 172.168.100.0/24. So if you're performing the lab, make sure that you are giving the IP address from the same range. Okay. Now coming to the lab part. So this is our ESXi server, and we have already virtual machine up and running. I have already powered it on. So that's our AD actually, Active Directory or the certificate authority or anything. That's our Cisco Unity connection, though we do not need for today's lab. And this is our publisher. The IP address is 101 CUCM publisher, and then these are like IMNP and the Jabber machine. Right. So let's understand a bit of theory. Okay. So when we see the deployment, let's directly go to the deployment itself, what we were talking about. All right. So if you see here, the deployment, that basically the deployment procedure, what we have here, the uh, or what in what way you can deploy the call manager. So these are few deployments that you have, and based on your requirement, you can use one of the deployment in your production, right? So these are supported IP telephony deployment models. We have single site deployment, we have multi-site WAN with the centralized call processing, multi-site WAN with the distributed call processing, and clustering over the WAN. The four types of deployment. Now you need to understand what basically these deployments are. I will not talk about much in terms of the benefits and all, but as you see, the single site deployment, from the picture itself, I can see here that they all call managers. So we are aware of the call manager clusters, right? In a call manager cluster, you can have how many call managers? You can have total 9 CUCM, out of which one would be the publisher and 8 could be the subscriber, right? So basically, and that becomes cluster, isn't it? So here in the single site deployment, all the call managers are going to sit in the same location, one location, right? So how about the calling then? How the call will take place? So all internal phones, when they are communicating with each other, that would be through, again, yes, call manager. But if you are trying to make any call which is external, in that case the call would go all the way to PSTN. So one thing you notice here, we do not use WAN here. In the single site deployment for all voice calls, we are only using PSTN. You may be using WAN, but only for the data, right? And every cluster, one cluster supports 30,000 IP phone. Now there is important thing here. What about the media resources? What about the media resources? Media resources like DSP resources, right? The applications, and then the uh, other resources, could be transcoded, could be M2, anything, right? Media resource. So in this basically site to site deployment, as you see, all the media resources sit there in the one location, not to the multiple locations, right? Why do we need media resource? Let's say DSP resource. If the call has to go outside and if the DSP is not installed or the PBDM is not installed in this router, call will not go to the PSTN. Straightforward, right? And you can also see in the debug also that the DSP resource is not available to complete the call like this, right? So here we are using PSTN for the external calls. So hope the site to site deployment is okay. I won't actually go through this benefits and all. Now talking about the deployment with the centralized call processing. So what is the difference here? You see, even the cluster is in one location, there also a cluster is in one location, but we are using WAN here first, and also there are phones across multiple branches, right? So if I don't have call manager over here, for example, let's say if I don't have call manager over here, then right, so then what would happen here? Since we are using WAN, all these phones, right, they would get registered through the WAN to these call managers. Just remember this, to these call managers. So here multiple sites are there in this centralized call processing, around 100 or I think 1,000 sites that can be supported, right? So for the registration, these phones go to the call manager and they get registered. Now in case, let's say if the WAN connection is down, right, for these branch offices, then what would happen to these phones? So these phones ultimately, this is where in this deployment we have something called SRST, right? This, we will install or we will configure this gateway as an SRST, so that in case if the phone loses the connection from the call manager, they should get registered with their gateway itself as RST, just like a CME. So when you are configuring in the router, there are two modes, either the SRST mode or the CME mode, right? So since you want to act, you want this gateway to act as an SRST, not the CME, right? So only the WAN connection when goes down and this phone go unreachable to the call manager, they will still get registered with the SRST, and they will have some basic functionality, or I would say we can still use PSTN to reach the site emergency calls. So here the media resources, again coming back to the media resources, DSP and all that resources are, distributed. You see, it could be centralized or it could be distributed because we have the phones here. So if the call is going to the PSTN, in that case, you need the DSP resources here as well. That's the centralized call processing. Next is the distributed call processing. From this picture itself, it is quite clear. We have multiple sites. Now, each site, we have this CUCM cluster, right? So things are pretty much same, or I would say it's easy. All intra communication would happen through the call managers. Inter cluster communication would happen through the WAN, right? If the WAN is not reachable, they will have a PSTN for the emergency calls. Now we are adding here one more component called gatekeeper. Why we are adding gatekeeper? So in the case of distributed call processing, and in case of you have, let's say, some thousands of sites, okay, branch offices like this, then it is always good to have a gatekeeper, so that all configuration you can put in the gatekeeper, rather configuring each gateway as in the thousands of configuration in each gateway. You will just put thousands of configuration in the gatekeeper, and all gateway would be pointed out to the gatekeeper. So let's say if this phone wants to talk to this phone, what would happen? The call would go to the gateway. Since gateway knows the gatekeeper, the call would be sent to the gatekeeper. Now gatekeeper would decide where that's basically the call number is, called party is, which gateway I have to send it. So gatekeeper would finally send it to this gateway, right? And that is how the gatekeeper plays an important role in case of the distributed call processing, and that too we have multiple sites. If you have few sites, then still you don't need gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is just here we are using for the centralized control, and also minimal configuration required on the gateways. Otherwise, all those thousands of, let's say, dial pair in the routers, we configure dial pair, right, for the voice reachability. You will configure thousands of dial pair here, thousands of dial pair here. Like this, you will configure thousands of dial pairs on all the thousands of sites or gateway. So the point is to reduce that configuration and put in one router configuration that becomes a gatekeeper. So this gateway basically sends that information to gatekeeper, and gatekeeper would send it to the actual call party. So that is basically the distributed call processing.
Can I ask a doubt, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you go back to the picture, please? So the gatekeeper is kind of a centralized management thing, or it also has some function?
It has
Like
a function. That's what I said. The call would send to the gatekeeper, the gateway. Gateway will forward that call to gatekeeper. Gatekeeper will now decide where the called party is, which gateway it is, whether I have to send it to this region or this region or this region. Then gatekeeper would send that call accordingly.
So what if there is no gatekeeper?
Then you have to configure all those configurations what you are putting here. You have to configure individual gateways.
Okay. So like when you said dial pairs, right? So like for example, today to have two sites, and tomorrow I'm adding one more site. So I will have to update all these dial pairs in every site. Is it
Every
like that?
site, yes.
Okay. So the dial pairs are not located for not each site. So when I add new sites or new dial things, I need to update all these routers again.
All these routers. So this is good actually point. This is where the gatekeeper comes in a picture, right? If you add one site, you don't have to configure the gateways, hundreds of thousands of gateways. Rather, you will configure only the gatekeeper.
So that will push the configuration to the end
Not
router.
required. Not required. These routers, they don't have now. When we have a gatekeeper, these routers do not need actually all those dial pairs. A single dial pair, which is forwarding that call to the gatekeeper. That's all.
What happens if the van is down then? The SRST will not work?
SRST, it is up to the deployment. If you want to configure them as an SRST, it can. SRST is still supported here. It's not like we
So in
cannot.
that case, the server doesn't have the config. I mean, the
But the
router doesn't
point
have the
is,
config.
even though
Mhm.
WAN goes down,
Okay.
right? In this case, WAN goes down. Intra-cluster communication will happen. These phones are already registered with the call managers, right? It is just
Okay.
that
So
the PSTN would be used.
mm, okay. But okay, there is a CUCM in that site. Yeah,
Every
I think
side
it.
we have CUCM.
Okay. Can you go back to the previous slide?
We don't have CUCM there.
There. Also, in that case, this topology will not work, right?
No. So in that case, these phones would get registered with the SRST.
Okay. So in that scenario, we cannot use the gatekeeper there.
No, we cannot. Gatekeeper is only the option when you have the network number of more sites. If your network is small,
Mhm.
if we have only 3 sites like
But but
this,
but again, the question is, so when we have a CUCM cluster in the branch site, why do we need a router should have a configuration? Why do we need that? Because the phone can get directly registered to the one of the subscribers in the cluster, right? Within in the site.
no, within the site, how about
Yeah.
the enter site communication?
So that CUCM knows what is outside the cluster, right? CUCM has some
No,
intelligence.
CUCM knows only the gateway.
Uh, okay. So the
CUCM
CUCM doesn't
doesn't
know
know.
the centralized gateway, the other side gateway. I mean, other side CUCMs means this is a cluster. It will not know it.
No,
So it acts as an individual cluster.
that's correct. So CUCM only knows that any call that has to go outside, I have to send it to the gateway. Now gateway will decide further.
So if you simply say all these are individual PBXs kind of thing, right? So they don't know each other. It connect via a trunk.
True, true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Then we have clustering over the WAN. And this clustering over the WAN, as you see, the name itself says clustering over the WAN. So we have call managers here. We have call managers here, but it is not two cluster. It is still a single cluster. Means these call managers across the WAN, different location, they are joining and they are the part of the same one cluster. But the difference only is that rather having those call managers in one place, one location, here the call managers are in multiple locations. That is something called clustering over the WAN. Now there are some requirements like delay should not cross 80 millisecond. So this 40 millisecond is one way, both the way. It should not cross actually this much, the round trip delay. Otherwise, the cluster replication talking about will be broken. So we have to really make sure that the bandwidth what we have given for the voice or the signaling, it is enough to carry. Right. So that's again another cluster here. Cool. That's something the redundancy design I was talking about. This is based on the requirement. One requirement is this. What is requirement? You get the requirement saying you have a 75,000 phones or less. You need to deploy the call manager. Now, whichever deployment you go for, right? In order to achieve that, how many call managers you need? Total 3 call managers you need. One call manager would act as an publisher, and then two would act as a subscriber, out of which one will act as a primary and the other will act as a backup. Right. So that's this is basically the requirement. Now another requirement, what if you have phone more than 75,000 and less than 15,000? Then you will go with this deployment. Total 5 call managers, 1 publisher, TFTP server, 4 subscribers, 2 are acting as a primary, they are the primary, and 2 subscribers acting as a subscriber, secondary. Means all the phones would get registered with these call managers first. They will get register only with them once this one of the primary subscriber is down, or maybe you have load balance or anything as such. And then final 30,000 phones. Total 8 of subscribers, 1 call manager, 4 are acting as a primary, and 4 are acting as a subscriber secondary. So that's basically the redundancy design. Any question from this? No question. So we'll go with the installation. Is pretty easy. We have some recorded videos. We will just go take you through the installation. Now before getting into the this no user part, we will understand how to add the phones here, adding the phone to the CUCM. So I have a slide for that. It is for that slide I need to go little uh, okay, little ahead. So you need to understand really the phone boot sequence, which we all are aware of, but it is good to revise it. When you connect these phones in the network, the first thing happens is it gets the power through the PoE from the switch. Then Cisco IP phone loads locally stored image. Locally stored image means maybe the phone has been used before and it has the image. So it will store whatever image it has. Once it is stored and it is booted up or the powered on properly, then switch provides actually with the help of CDP, Cisco Discovery Protocol, switch provides the VLAN information to the phone. Now this phone is aware of what VLAN it is the part of. Okay, 1 second guys, just give me a moment. Right, so yep, what we discussed so far, again, just to revise it, just to take you through again, the CUCM deployment. We've discussed the different deployment method, single site, cluster, centralized call processing, distributed call processing, and multi-site or clustering over the WAN. And then we're talking about how to add the phone. So before moving further, we would like to understand this basically the phone boot process, which you guys are already aware of. But in case if you're not, let's understand this. Right. So as I said, the phone, the first thing, as soon as you connect the phone to the network, the phone tries to get the power, right? And from where it will get the power? PoE, power over Ethernet, means the switch will provide the power to the phone. That's the first step. Then Cisco, the Cisco IP phone might have some loaded images, pre-stored images that it will use those images to boot it up and finally fully powered on. Once it is powered on, switch basically using the Cisco Discovery Protocol, right? It will assign the VLAN ID to the phone. Now this phone is a part of a certain VLAN, right? Let's say the voice VLAN, right? What if if this phone doesn't have the voice VLAN? Is that it won't work, or it is compulsory to have a phone with a voice VLAN?
Not necessary.
Not exactly necessary. Things will still work, but the voice quality won't be that great, just because of voice is getting into data VLAN encapsulation and then going further. Once it has the phone VLAN, by the way, the next thing happens is the phone requires IP address, and this is where it sends the request or discover to the phone, DHCP server. Now in this environment, as you see here, we have a DHCP server. The request would go. It could be server, it could be router that you are going to configure, or it could be call manager itself. So whosoever is DHCP server will reply with the valid IP address to it. Now it has the IP address, and also for further images to download, the DHCP server will also let this phone know who is your TFTP server, so that it can contact the TFTP server. Once it has the ID of TFTP server, this is what basically CCP phone gets configuration from TFTP server. So it will contact TFTP server, will get the configuration if at all it is there, right? Any new files if it is, and finally it will send registration request to the call manager, right? Server. Once it gets registered, call manager basically would send some soft key templates, using the SCCP phone. Or so this basically, think of, we are using here the signaling protocol SCCP, Cisco client uh, skinny client control protocol, right? Now the difference between SCCP phone boot process and then SIP phone boot process would be little different, but similar steps. So let's also understand the SIP boot process over here. So this is basically the SIP phone boot process, right? So what happens here is the initial things, right? The boot sequence for the SIP and SCCP are similar. The first 4 steps remain the same. Then main differences are this. What are the main differences? The MAC address, right? The SIP phone get all their configuration from the configuration file. So means the SIP phone has to download this configuration file from the TFTP server, right? Therefore, the this MAC config file is much larger for the SIP than the SCCP. So while actually downloading this config, XML file, it takes some time, but not in the production really. But still, compared to the SCCP, it is larger. Also optional, but we have option. The SIP phone also can download the dial plans if at all from the TFTP server, right? Download the dial rules, dial plans, XML configuration file, right? CTL if present. If the phone already has a CTL, it won't, if right. Otherwise, it will download the CTL file from the TFTP server as well. Soft key. The SIP basically phone download their soft key also sits in this XML file. So they'll also download that. So once basically all these things done, this is where it will send an registration request to the call manager, and finally the registration would happen. 200 OK means this phone is successfully registered with the call manager, right? So this is phone boots and tries to download CTL file, and the CTL file contains a set of certificates and etc. This if phone requests its MAC address CNF file from the TFTP server, XML the default.cnf XML phone request for the loads file also, and then next step is to register with the highest priority call manager server. The phone will check the auto registration name parameter. If the auto registration is enabled in the call manager, this is one of the method actually to add the phone auto registration. We will discuss about that, right? So phone would basically get registered finally. If no auto registration, then you need to set up the SIP phone manually, right? So let's understand here. See, in our environment, as I mentioned, we are going to use uh, the CUCM as a DHCP server as well as TFTP server. We are going to use both here itself, CUCM publisher itself, right? So since I am using CUCM publisher as a DHCP server and TFTP server, the first thing that you have to make sure is the services in the call manager, you are activating those services, DHCP and TFTP. How would you do that? So let's go to the call manager.
I got a doubt on that SIP thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to the presentation. Okay, so the SIP, you said the SIP phone will get the file, whatever file there was some Mac dot something file, right?
Mhm.
So each phone should, I mean, the TFTP should have a separate file for each phone. How is it? Like if I
Yes,
have 1,000 phones.
at the time of installation, if you are making call manager itself as a TFTP server, at the time of
Mm-hmm.
the installation itself, it downloads. There are TFTP files for all the phones. But if at all it's a new implementation and you do not have that file,
Mm-hmm.
right? In that case, you can download separate files. You will download the file from the Cisco website and then upload it in the call manager under the TFTP.
So, I mean, you get a file for each phone from Cisco website?
Yes,
Okay. So that file will have a default configuration, right? If there is
default
any.
config. Yes.
So how do I customize it? Like if I have 1,000 phones to do it.
Hmm. So if you
So
have a
because
thousand of phones, those
Mhm.
thousand phones won't be, you know, either either you will have one model or two model, and let's say three models. So these three models already files are already there with this call manager.
Okay, model is fine, but you mentioned a MAC, right? So it will check for the MAC address or what?
Yeah, MAC address means it's local phone MAC address.
Yeah, so the file name should be with the MAC address for each phone.
File name, yes. What happens? It
Uh-huh.
bounds actually. So at the time of downloading, when it downloads, right?
Uh,
That time, let's say this phone A is downloading that file. So
okay.
a MAC address would basically that how that mapping would happen is the CNF file with the MAC address, and this is the extension they use.
Hmm.
That happened for the all the phones.
So I will store a single file. The phone will automatically download
Oh
and
yes, single file.
rename the MAC, rename the file according to its MAC address, or how is it? It's going to work?
Yes, it will
Or I have
rename
to,
according to its MAC address.
so I don't have to store, like I have, if I have 500 phones, I don't have to have a 500 files with different MAC address in the TFTP. It's not required.
Not
It checks on
required.
the model.
Yes.
For each model, there will be a single file.
For each model, there would be a single file. That's correct. Now, 100
And
phones, that
that file
doesn't mean
will,
that 100 models, right?
I understood. Yeah, if it is 100 phones, 3 models or 2 models, so there will be 2 files only.
Two files.
And this will have custom configuration. Okay, understood. Now, what is the difference? Like, do we need a different license on the CUCM to SCCP phone and the SIP phone, or is it something same?
You do not need license actually, but you need the license for the users. Now the phones without users won't have the advanced functionality, right? So you will
Right.
have the license for the users.
So, is it a common license for all the phones, or is it separate license?
It's a common license for all the users. Yes, it is common license for all the users.
So,
But
so
there also we have a
when I'm
features.
okay.
Feature wise it is.
So
What
features
all
is
features?
fine. Like if I decide like I want 200 phones SCCP, and I'm next lot I'm buying 1,000 SIP phones or 100 SIP phones, right?
Mhm.
So the license would be the same for all these together, or it will be different the license itself. Features I understand. There are, if you want different features, you need to buy that. But the phone registration model itself, is it a different?
No, it doesn't matter with the model actually.
Okay, and the protocol also
Yeah,
doesn't matter with the protocol also.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So let me just go ahead quickly to the call manager. These are the this is our Active Directory Unity connection. I have already powered it on CUCM. So by now we should be having they should be up. And then IMP headquarter and then Jabber also. Let's so the IP address. So when you are accessing this call manager from for the lab purpose, use this IP address. 101 is the IP address of call manager that we are using at this particular point. So okay, so what we were supposed to do is okay, we want to verify the services first, right? TFTP and DACP. So in order to verify those services are up or running, we'll go to the serviceability page, unified serviceability. We are at the moment Cisco Call Manager administration page. We will go through all those options here. Most of the options you guys might be using it, but while doing the lab, we would go through all those options again. And these are the navigations. Here you have unified. This is basically for the reporting. This is where we are at the moment for the disaster recovery system in case if you want to recover it, right? And then Cisco Unified Serviceability. This is where all the services would be available. And then OS administration, maybe if you want to upgrade the call manager or download some COP file or any update file, that's something you can do it from here, OS administration, as well as from the CLI, both. And then finally, this IMN presence reporting. That's basically for the IMN presence reporting. So at the moment, I'll go with this Cisco Unified Serviceability page. All right, so here we go. So a little bit of it, the traces, this is the traces we use basically to collect the logs, right? Uh, when we say collect the logs, for collecting the logs, we use separate tool called RTMT in call manager. But RTMT, while collecting the logs from RTMT, there are some default level of logs that would be collected from RTMT. Now, if you want a high debugging, right, packets on particular that logs, this is where you can configure under this trace and then configuration and go service by service and configure what exactly you want additionally. At the moment, services, tool, click on tools, service activation, anything related to the feature services or anything related to the network services. I'll simply go to the service activation, right? You need to select what basically server. So it's CUCM itself. Okay, so though I have actually activated those services, but this is the this DSCP monitor service and Cisco TFTP server. You need to make sure these two are activated. And for having to have a calling functionality, you need to go ahead and enable this also, Cisco Call Manager service. So these three services, if you enable, this call manager would start functioning. So it is already, but what you have to do actually, you have to check it and save. So we have already done it. So I'll just go ahead and go back to the call manager administration page. However, just to take you through, we have multiple services like bulk administration tool. This is for the BAT we would be doing anyways. For the bulk administration tool also, this service is required. If it is not, then bulk administration would not work actually. You won't be able to upload files. This is basically for the LDAP dir sync. So if you are trying to fetch the users or synchronize the users from the LDAP Active Directory, and if this service is not enabled, you won't be able to do that. Also, if you want to troubleshoot LDAP issue, you need to collect the logs for this dir sync. Similarly, you need to collect the log for the bulk administration tool in case of BAT issue. Anything related to this TFTP issue, collect TFTP logs and so. All right, so we are again back to this. Oops, why I clicked on plugin? Um, I don't know why I have clicked it, but however, since I have clicked it, this is where you would download that Cisco real-time monitoring RTMT tool for the Linux as well as for the Windows. So from here, you can basically download the application, right? Uh, let's go to the OS administration here. Just click on OS administration. It will again ask for the credentials here. And multiple things here. You see this TFTP file management. These are, I was talking about the TFTP, right? Files. You see, these are the all files that it comes with the installation itself. That's 1 out of 15. So we have a lot more actually. Page 50, I would say 250. So all the models 7, 9, 60, 80, all the models almost would be lot of actually. So but if at all you need another TFTP file that you maybe a new implementation or something you want to deploy something, then you have option to upload that file here. Right, let's go back again. Little bit of, if you want to upgrade in this call manager, or you want to uh, update any file or cop file or any patch file, this is where you would do it from. Certificates, this is related to the certificates and some advanced settings like IP and TP server settings and all. I'll go back to the call manager administration. So what we were doing here now, since we have verified that the call manager is running those services, we have those services running in the call manager. What I would do, in order to configure the DHCP server, go to the system Click on Cisco Unified Call Manager and select the call manager here. That's the call manager. Uh, by default, for the so when we say adding the phones, right? Okay, so I think, yep. When we say adding the phones, these are some methods how you can add the phone through auto registration, through manual configuration, widely used manual configuration and auto configuration. If you want, if it is migration or something and you want to do it bulk, then you can use the bulk bat tool, right? MAC address is here required in the bat files. That would be dummy MAC address, but again, it is required. And then we have, the auto registration phone tool. That we call it cap tool. So this is also kind of very scalable. MAC address is still not required here, right? Little bit of complex configuration. What initially we would be doing is these two, and then we will see the bat also. So for the auto registration I'm talking about now, go to the system and then unified call manager. What you have to do is you have to uncheck this option. Specify universal device template and line template here, which is by default it is none. You need to specify it to the auto registration template. Similarly, here it is none. You need to specify simple line template. These are the templates already available. And specify the directory, starting directory numbers range. Right? So you can have, let's say, 7001 to 7010, right? And that's it. That's it here. Nothing else. Click on save, right? All phones that we have already, just reset it. So the phones would get the new extension. Now to verify it, go to the device and click on phone, because I want to verify who all got registered. So click on find, and at the moment this is the video phone 9971. This is the CIPC phone that we have. What I'll do is just give me a moment. Since I have already powered on that phone, what I'll do is, where is my RDP? So here is the RDP. This is my one of the virtual machine. We are here in the virtual machine now. What I'll do, I'll just open this IP communicator. Okay, allow access. Oops. Earlier it was working fine. Is either missing or not connected properly. Please reconnect it and select OK. Okay. To select a different device using tuning wizard, select them. They're not no compatible. This is getting disconnected. No worries. What I'll do is I'll just log into another machine. I'll fix this anyways issue. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just close this. And access the another server, which is this guy. Okay, so I have a phone over here. Let's close it. This phone should get the extension starting from the 7000. I will log in here as well. So HTTPS 101. That's our call manager. Oops. So I'll go to the device, phones. Okay, so first of all, I see some of the phones got registered, and they got the extension? No, they have not got the extension. Okay, so I would say CIPC and you guys both. Um, I think in this network we have the CME as well connected to it. That is the reason the phones are also getting registered with the CME and call manager. Yeah. Show IP interface brief. Show ePhones. Yeah, I see some of the phones are getting registered. Idle down. Okay. 9,000, 9,003. No, none of the phones are getting registered, so which is fine. I'll just reset this too. Reset, restart, and close. Yes, here there I have configured for the auto registration. We have configured the extension 7000. No, 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 not you. All right, this guy already registered with the call manager. That's Java, but we do not need Java at the moment. Let me see if I can activate this. The default Windows audio device is missing either. Why it is happening? Because I know that. Now, this guy is requesting the extension. Let me just check the preference. It should have 170, 160, 100 or 101, which is fine. There shouldn't be any problem. Let's say the cancel, exit. I'll just simply say exit. So it will completely go. Okay, and come on. They are registered and the job are also registered, but I still do not see. Let me see what this phone is getting. This is the manual, by the way. We have added it manually. You see here, not with the, so, but the one which is this one, it should get registered with the new extension, and the extension is 7000. Let me just go back again. Did we save the config there? I'm not sure. Yeah, 7001 and 7010, which is fine. The next to be used is the 7001. So should be,
The auto registration option was disabled there. Is that required to be enabled?
uncheck means it is enabled.
Mhm.
Sometimes it happens where the call manager holds the old record. So that's where basically you need to delete those files, or because 5001 is the, what I'm thinking is CIPC auto registration. Okay, but why it is getting 5001? Either at this point I have to restart the you know, the CM admin service one, or restart the device itself as in the server. But let me see again. I see this is CIPC and it is registered though, but
You will not be able to see the traces on the CUCM, like if the phone is trying to download the files or trying to register.
these
Whether
are
it will show you.
SCCP phones, should not be uh, any issue. But since they are taking it as an old reference, not the new reference, what we have configured here, and that is the reason they are still actually selecting that one. I would just disable it once and save it and enable it, save it, reset, close. If not, then I would go ahead and restart the service. So I still see the 5000 it is taking. So I'll go to the unified serviceability page. tools, service activation. Cisco call manager, click on save. Now, since this service is not available, right? You see, oops, not this. You see this phone is trying to get registered, but it's not actually getting registered. Why? Because the service is not available. The Cisco call manager, this service is quite, uh, you know, heavy file or heavy service, I would say. So you need to make sure that you are not doing it in the production environment or completely off business hours. It's deactivated. Now I'll just click on check on and click on this. All right, that's done. So let's go there. The call manager. And phone. I still that. One second. Right. So we have that phone now with the new extension. What I'm doing is now the manual, as in how to add the phones manually. So what I did actually, I am under the device, under the phones, and click on add new, select the model. In this case, it is 7965. Select the protocol. device pool. In this case, I do not have device pool configured. You can configure default 7965 79, come on, 65 SCCP common phone, that is default. If you want to specify the user, then you have to specify the user. At the moment, I would say no user, and that's it. Device security profile. I'll just quickly device security profile and say 7965 standard SCCP non-secure and add. That's where you need to add the, so these are the line buttons, you need to add the extensions here. So I would say 9001234 and save. Add it successfully, and that's it. I would just say reset, close, apply config, okay, done. So that phone was which one? This one. Now I need to check what IP address it has taken on the phone, because at the moment I see the CME is also acting as a server. Yeah, it is registered with the CME. I will quickly do one thing. I will go here and shut down that port. Enable show IP interface brief. Show IP interface brief. Shut down this interface for time being. Interface shut down. Right. Show IP DHCP binding. It's basically giving the MAC address to this. So now that interface is down, so hopefully this phone should get IP address from first call manager, and then since we have configured the call manager to accept the registration from this manually. So what I have done is I have just removed, shut down the interface of where it is connected to, because there was another DHCP server that phone was getting the IP address from. So I have shut down that interface. And powered on the phone as well. All right, so I see that the phone has got the power. Now it should receive the IP address. Basically the same boot up process. Login. Right, so I see that the phone has been registered successfully. registered with the call manager. IP allocation is 100.12 and which is having the extension 9001234. So if I go here and just call from that 7001, I should see the call. Right, and call. Yeah, so this is how basically we add the phones manually. We will take some 10 minutes of break and then continue this. So today the next the topic that we would be discussing about is the user in the call manager. So managing user accounts in Cisco Unified Call Manager, right? These are some of the objectives that we have. So obviously identify the different user accounts. So when we say the different user accounts, right? This is something you can do it from the user account. I'll just explain. But there are two types of user accounts in Call Manager. End user, as the name says, end, right? And the application users as the application. So any application that you are using other than the call manager, anything else, let's say IMNP or maybe other applications, that's where basically you have to create application users. Now this end user is associated with the individual person. Application user is associated with the application. That's basically for personal use, for non-interactive logins. And this is basically used for administrator logins as well, and used only for the application authorization. When we say application authorization, what does it mean? Application authorization means I will create one application user in the call manager and with the password. Now, if I want to integrate this application with the call manager, so ultimately the integration has to be there. So when this application is coming to call manager with the same application and user credentials over here, call manager can trust this guy because the same application user exists here in the database. And this guy is coming with the same, this application is coming with the same credential. Could be, let's say, attendant console, right? Cisco attendant console. So that's where basically the authorization, it is used for authorization. Included in user directory, it is not included. User directory means this user you would see in the directory of the call manager. And this can be provisioned and authenticated using the external directory services, which is called lightweight directory access protocol, LDAP, right? But for application users, you would not use LDAP, and the reason being only application users, you do not have to create so many, right? I mean, based on though again the environment, but users are something you will create if you have thousands of employees. If you have more than that, for all those employees, you will create a user, right? So the idea here is either you create the end user manually in the call manager, or you would sync because those users are already there in the call manager Active Directory, right? So from there you can synchronize it. So how to do that? Actually, go to the application user management and click on end user, right? For application user, click on application user. For end user, click on end user. So there are few there are few end users that we have here, right? What I'll do is I will create, add new, and say test1. Give the password. Password, last name, user, middle name, and all that. That's it. Just click on save. So what would happen here is you created this end user. But just remember, this end user is not associated with any phone. Getting my point? This end user is not associated with the phone. Why do you have to associate this end user with the phone? So that you can log into that phone using your user credential. So in order to do that, to associate a device, you have here device association. Click on this, click find. And these are the phones that you can associate. I would say, okay, let me just associate this guy over here. Check, save selected changes. So you see here now, this user is controlled, right? And click on save. Now, once you click on save, this device has been associated. One more extra thing that you have to do is, I'll tell you later. But at the moment, you cannot access this call manager. You cannot access this phone, right? I'll say, let's go ahead and say 172.101 CCM user. It will take you to the user, self-care portal. This is where you can say test one and password. Click on sign in. Now you see, you do not have required privileges to access this system, contact system administrator. Why you do not have privilege? Because you have not assigned roles, permissions to this user yet. This is where you need to assign the permission. How you would do that? Click on add to access control group. So in call manager, we have, you see that roles and access control group. So if I go to the roles, these are pretty much different roles. Okay. These are pretty much different roles. Let's say standard CCM end user, right? So available for this user. What all this is the group, right? Group information. Now, if I go ahead and user management and click on roles, these are different roles. You see the CCM end user, access to CCM user option pages, right? You can access end user. So this basically role has to be given to the user. So ultimately, when I go back to the user, end user test and say add to access control group. So I am under the group and I would say standard CCM end user. Okay, just select it, click add selected and save. So what happened along with that group, the roles already have been assigned. CCM user administration and CCM end user. Click on save. Right. So now this user has been associated with the phone. I will go to the phone, click on this phone, and you see at the last, or maybe particular device, at the last, associate end user. Test, add selected, save. So now that basically user test one is associated with the phone, right? Now I should be able to CCM user, test one, password. It's asking for the new pin. I'll say 12345, and here we go. Now I have access to that phone. You see that? I do have access to that phone. Now I can manage that phone. This is my self-care portal. I can manage it. Right? I have phone settings, I have voicemail, I'm in availability, general settings. You want to download anything, right? Phone settings, if you want to forward the call, speed dials. You cannot call from here, just remember. But you can definitely forward all call to your maybe voicemail or maybe to any number that you want to add, anything, right? So you have that flexibility. This only flexibility would be available when you are assigning this user with the roles and associating with the phones. Then only it is possible. So that is how we create the end user, right? That is the manual way to create end user. Now what I'll do is I will create end user using the bulk administration tool, BAT. So I have test one already. I'll say test two and test three. Just remember the bulk provision service we have already activated there in the serviceability page. So that service is running already. Now there are some steps. Let's understand through a little bit. Okay, bulk administration tool. This is a service that has to be enabled, and managing user accounts using this scope BAT. These are some 4 steps that you need to do. Configure Cisco Unified Call Manager BAT user template, create CSV data input file, upload CSV data input file, and then call manager BAT job to add users. Finally, verify the status. Some 5 steps. How to do that? So for that, I'll take a help of this machine. I will access call manager from here. The first thing that we have to do here is go to the bulk administration tool. We have different section itself. You see, bulk administration tool. Click on upload download files. By default, this bad file, I'll just delete it. By default, you will see this. Means this you will see always. This comes with the system itself. What you need to do is you need to select this and download selected. Now this file is downloaded. Let's open it. And security warnings where macros have been disabled. I will enable the macros so that I can make the changes. Right. No. And then, so this is how it looks like. You see at the down bottom section here, you have multiple profiles, enroll, trust enrollment. See, phone, services, users, fax, call, gateways if you want to add anything, remote destination profile, phone migration, anything. At the moment, I have to deal with the user. So I'll click on user, and under the user, I will give the input. I would say test 2. I'll create 2 users here. Anyways, this is optional. What is mandatory is the last name. So I would say user. User ID is also mandatory. So I would say test 2 and test 3. This is the user ID. Password, everything is optional here. Department ID, manager ID, PIN, default profile, local, telephone, home number. You can fill all those details, whatever details you need it here. If you have, right? User profile, present server, all that. At the last, at the right side, you'll see export to BAT format. So what you need to do is click on export to BAT format. And this is where you need to browse it, where you want to save it actually. So I will say desktop and give the name. Let's say this is sales user, sales batch 1. Okay, click on OK. This file has been saved successfully. That's the one step. Second step, you need to create a user template. So under the same bulk administration tool, under the user template, we have already this with the same name. Since I have given there the sales user, I would do one thing. I'll just delete it. Now we don't have anything. We'll add new, give the name. Okay, sales user, and that's it. You don't have to do anything. It is just that it automatically it'll take it. Talks about the default password. What do you want to set? Nothing. I would set it later. The sales user has been, the user template has been configured. Now what you will do is, third step is, this file that you have saved there in the desktop, I will upload it, right? So download, not download, but upload it. So let's say add new and browse it. Sales bat 1, here we go. Select the target. What do you want to do? Options. It's users. I would say users. Select transaction type. Insert user or delete user, update user. These are the options. Because this is the new user, I would say insert user and save. So this file now has been saved here. That's the third step, right? Fourth step is go to the bulk administration tool, user, and click on insert users. Give the file name that you want to insert, sales bat 1. Give the user template name here. Now remember, if you haven't created the user template, it would not show here. If you haven't uploaded that bat file, it will not show here, right? What you want to do is, I want to run that job immediately. Insert user, right? Run this job immediately. Click on submit. That's the fourth step. Now the job is submitted, right? Check the job scheduler. I'll go to the bulk administration tool and at the last, job scheduler. This is the job ID that we have given. It says completed, but let's see this job ID. What is the result? The result, it says it is status is done. and it says error. Okay. Now, what is the error? Number of record processed and error also. If it is successful, you will see here successful. Let's see this file. Test password should be specified either in CSV file or default credential for password should be set. Okay. So what is happening here is, let's close it. Under the user template that we have created, sales user, what I'll do, I'll set the default password to user ID and default pin to the telephone number, right? User ID we have already given it, so I would say default password. Either you do it here or you make the change there. That's the, you know, solution. So I have changed it here, so I do not have to now do this, but yes, I have to start it again. Job scheduler, it says processing completed. Now it says success. To success. Inserted for 2 users passed. No failed. So now I can verify there also. If I go to the user management, click on end user, I should see test 1 and test 2 here. Test 1 and test 2. So this is how we do it from the bulk administration tool. All right. The next thing, so here, let me just check deployment, adding phone to the call manager, adding end user to the and associating with the phone, BAT. Now LDAP.
I have a question here.
Go ahead.
So this users, whatever you created, so is that mandatory for a normal hard phone to work?
What do you mean by normal hard photo one?
I mean, you showed some
Before
Cisco,
that, we haven't specified any user and it was working fine, right? So it is
right? We
just their
can make
extra.
calls, everything we can make.
Yeah, everything will work. It is
Mhm.
just that advanced features like extension mobility, device mobility, and all. If user is not associated with the phone, you cannot use those features. Any advanced feature, you cannot use it because that's where basically you need the user ID,
Okay.
right? Now let's understand LDAP, what exactly this is. So this is what we have done it. LDAP is basically protocol, right? That basically is used for the user lookups, user authentication, and provisioning the database synchronization. Right. So this is your Active Directory. What would happen? We have the IP telephony, we have all that user lookup, user provisioning, and also authentication and authorization that would be happening using this. So let's say these are the users, you don't want call manager to be involved in the authentication and all. So what you can do is you can provision those users from the Active Directory because anyways the details already there in the Active Directory, isn't it? You can just synchronize, provision those users. Once those users are provisioned, those users can be used for the authentication also. Whenever they are accessing or log into the device, it will ask for the password, right? So two components here. One is the synchronization and one is the authentication. These are the supported directories. We are using Active Directory, this one. Could be 2000, 2003, 16, 12, 19, anything. We are not using these three. Synchronization is the synchronizing the user details, and authentication is authenticating those users. Now, what is synchronization? It is used for provisioning. User cannot be added or deleted from the call manager. Users are added or deleted in LDAP directory. Basic some functionalities are still available from the call manager that you can do it, Rest it is read only. User password, something that you can change it from the call manager if you are only using synchronization, right? These are the three scenarios if you are using no LDAP, LDAP synchronization or authentication. So no LDAP means everything is local. You'll create manually the way we have done it, password, everything. If you are using LDAP for the synchronization, then all the user ID and everything would be replicated to the local, managed by LDAP. This password and all those settings is still managed locally from the call manager. And authentication, LDAP replication, local, LDAP. Password now you cannot change when you are using the authentication. You can change it only in the Active Directory, but this settings is still local in all three. These settings, pin, groups, roles, and all that. Okay, so how to do that? DIR sync is already activated, right? DIR sync is already activated, and I will go ahead and access first our Active Directory here. So this is our Active Directory server. Now what you need to do here is, in order to have authentication, you need to configure one Active Directory. This is not definitely your job. This is the admin job. You would not be dealing with this Active Directory at all. You being collaboration engineer, but just telling you the option. If you go to the tools, click on Active Directory users and computers. Under the CHAMP, these are, we call it organizational unit. These all are the left side. Under the CHAMP domain controller, all are organizational unit. What I have done, first, to have authentication between this Active Directory and the call manager. Okay, I have created one user. The name is Active Directory. This name should be pretty much, you should remember it properly, because this is the name you are going to give there in the call manager for the authentication. I was telling you, right? The user, and then the password also you should know. So this basically Active Directory is already there. Okay, I have created it before. And once the authentication is successful between call manager and Active Directory, this is the CUCM organization unit that we have created. And here I have the two users created with it, sample1, sample2, right? I want the sample1 and sample2 to be synchronized in call manager. So as of now, I do not have those users. This is sample11, right? Not the, anyway, just for the, we'll just delete it, not to get confused. So we do not have sample1 and 2. What I'll do now is go to the system, and you see the LDAP system. Go ahead and click on LDAP system. You need to decide here what directory that you are using. So we are using Active Directory, Microsoft. And these are the attribute for the user ID, SAM account name. That's basically, you can also do it using the mail, employee name, telephone, and all. But that's where everyone, use that. Basically, it's quite easy also. Check this. Enable synchronization for LDAP. So save it. Next step is LDAP directory, means synchronization. Click on this. We do not have directory anymore, so we need to add new. Say anything, AD. But just remember here, the distinguished name, LDAP manager distinguished name. In this case, it would be Active Directory @champ.com. The one we have created there. and password. Um, Generic password should be there. Confirm password, whatever password you have given there. This search base is very important. So organizational unit, OU we call it. It is CUCM. Then domain controller, it is champ and also DC, it is .com. So this means once the authentication happens using this Active Directory, Active AD, is it VE Active Directory? Otherwise, it will not take it. Let's verify this. Sorry, yeah, VE Active Directory, right? Directory. Once the authentication happens, LDAP user search base, this call manager would check on this organization unit using this domain controller. And then down, these are other details. User only, perform sync just once. I would like to perform once. And these are the standard user fields to be synchronized, that whenever you are getting synchronization, add the server here. So I would say 172 or 168 or 100.123. That's the server 123, and click on save. Don't save it. It says added successfully. Perfect. So perform just once, perform fully synchronization. It's happening. This AD has been created. Now, since it has been added successfully, it should look to that Active Directory. And here we go. Sample 1 and 2, they are active enabled LDAP synchronization user. So synchronized. dir sync is a service that has to be activated. I'm under this now, under the user, one of the sample 1 user. You see the password, I can still change it. Pin, I can still change it. Rest other details can't. Some of the details I can still change it, right? If you don't want to change the password, this also enable authentication. So go ahead and click on LDAP authentication and select it. Okay, click on save. Now the authentication I am also using. So now if I go to the end user, again to the sample 1, you see password is gone. I cannot change it. It's not visible at all. Only the pin is something you can change it. This is what we have seen here in the document. We have seen these details, you can still make it local, but the password is something you can only change it from the LDAP. And these details, user ID and all that, it's still local. Right, so with this lab, we are pretty much successfully covered with this also. So we have studied today all these topics. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have any question, please let me know. Thanks for watching.